Call the meeting to order. First thing will be the Pledge of Allegiance, and following the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to have a moment of silence for the 19 students and 2 teachers in Texas and our own Emily Hilscher. Start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first order of business is to adopt the agenda, and our secretary has asked us to add an item concerning the appeal of our decision on the dog training center down in Amosville, and so we'll put that under new business.
Well, I move that we adopt the agenda with the addition of the discussion about dog kennels under new business.
Second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes. Minutes are not going to be available for this meeting, so we will have them for the next meeting, and so we will skip over item C. And that takes us right into the public hearing. Okay, our first public hearing is for Edward and Karen, is it Rissing or?
Rissing.
Rissing, okay. Edward and Karen Rissing, and they've applied for an accessory dwelling unit for property located at 100 Eagles Nest Lane, identified by tax map number 50-1-B. This property is 9.960 acres in size and is zoned agricultural. The Rissings propose to convert their existing workshop into the accessory dwelling unit. It will obtain 1,119 square feet of living space and 170 feet from the main home. This use is pursuant to 170-36A and subject to additional regulations of 170-62G. At the April 20th meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this application. So first we'll let the applicant come forward and make any statements they wish to make. If they don't wish to make any, that's up to them.
I don't want to come forward, but I'll stand. Our son and daughter-in-law want to live there for a while, so that's where we would hope to let it pass us, because it'd be great. That's it.
Thank you. Next we'll take the input from the zoning administrator.
I've tried everything on BoardDocs for you that I have.
Okay. You've heard comments from BoardDocs. So at this point, we'll open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. If anyone wishes to stand and make a comment, please do, but identify your name by name and your district. Okay, hearing no one, we will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and move on to findings. I assume the members have all taken a look at the application or whatever, and rather than going through the findings, are there any of the standards that anybody wishes to address in regards to this application? Hearing none, does anybody wish to make a motion to accept or deny the application?
I move that we accept the application.
I second it.
Motion's been moved and seconded. And I'd just like to say prior to the vote that I wish all our applications were this good.
Oh,
All the information is there, and it makes it very easy on us, and it
Good.
makes it very easy on you.
great.
This is a roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Tiggleman. Very good.
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
And the chairman votes aye. So the motion is passed, permit is issued. Tell the kids they can move it.
Pardon me?
Tell the kids they can.
Oh, yeah. Yes. They'll be very happy. Thanks.
Okay, the next public hearing is in regards to the application by the Chester Gap Baptist Church. The Chester Gap Baptist Church is proposing to hold outdoor activities for the church on a lot the church purchased many years ago. The church itself is located 41 Waterfall Road, and this lot is located on Headwaters, and the lot they're talking about is located on Headwaters Road. It is proposed to hold functions such as picnics, youth activities, Easter services, vacations, Bible school, etc. on this property due to the limited outside space at the church itself. A 200 by 200 foot level pad has been graded off for such activities. This property is identified by tax map number 1-87B. It's 24.33 acres in size and is an owned residential village. The lot is currently wooded, except where it's been cleared, and vacant, and no structures are being proposed at this time. This use is pursuant to 170-36B and subject to additional regulations of 170-63A. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this application at their regular meeting on May 20th, 2022, and recommend approval with conditions to the BZA, which are attached. Does the applicant wish to make any statement?
Yes, sir. My name is Edna Grove. I live in the Wakefield District. I am the current chairman of the board of directors for the Chester Gap Baptist Church. As you said, we've cleared a 200 by 200 foot area on the property. Basically, it's in the center of the property to hold outdoor activities, worship activities, and mission activities for the community. We have our own access road, but we're trying to move that closer to the edge of the property. We have underground electrical in place, functional. At the recommendation of the Planning Commission, we reached out to all of the neighboring property owners. We sent personalized letters to 11 property owners on the Warren County side and 31 on the Rappahannock County side asking for their support. We did get some of those letters back. In fact, we got about 27% of the response back as favorable. We did make a copy and put them in this book for you. We also used what's called Every Door Direct. We mailed 262 pieces of mail to just the residents of Chester Gap. Again, we got about 30% of those back as well. We have no intention of renting the site at all. We would make it available for first responders to use as a helicopter pad if needed. In 2012, there was a special use permit granted for this site for the church to build a church, but we didn't have the money at the time, still don't have the money, but a special use permit was granted. There were two conditions to that permit in 2012. One was that we would have VDOT approve the final entrance, and the second was that we would have no excavation that would impact Mr. Vitito's property, his spring water source, and we would intend to stand by both of those even today. At the Planning Commission, we agreed to the terms of an event would be greater than 20 people. We would limit it to 8 events per year, and we would have no more than 60 cars up at the property site at any one time. So we agreed to those, and at the request of this board, we've provided parking maps, parking designs, tax maps, there was a whole list of things we provided earlier. So the church is very excited to be able to use this property. We still want to be good neighbors for years to come. So that's really why we're here today. And I have a copy of all these if you'd like to have them. There's 85 letters of support that we have. And I gave Steph this Ritter a copy earlier, so.
I believe you, the planning commission got the same thing. didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so the county's coming.
Yep. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, members of the board, are there any questions of the applicant? We'll start with Mr. Pickleman.
Yeah,
You might want to take the mask off.
excuse me,
There.
it's like eating. Maybe put the mask on. I'm concerned about the actual road itself that comply with the needs of getting two-way traffic, because I drove in there and right now it's one ruts and four-wheel
Right now it's a logging trail.
Yeah,
It's not a road.
and I understand from the maps that you provided that you have another site for the road, and but I just wanted to make sure that it met the standards for two cars passing in opposite directions with alacrity.
Excuse me, you're going to have, could you please identify
I'm
yourself?
Roger Orman, I'm the pastor of Chester Gap Baptist Church.
And you live in what district?
I serve the Wakefield District, the church where it's located.
Where do you live?
I live in North Carolina now. I moved last week, and lightning hit my house the next day. So, yeah. The challenge that we had is originally we were putting in a 18-foot wide road, met with the county officials, and they suggested for land disturbance we go to a 12-foot wide road. And so that is the plans that we have submitted and have been approved by the county. Once we have a written approval, but not a permit, because we're trying to find a land disturber who's registered with the Commonwealth of Virginia. Once that land disturber is secured, then that road will be begun. The road will go, right now that logging trail goes by on Mr. Settle's property. So we have to go about 25 to 50 feet up toward the hip mountain to put in the 12-foot road. So
Going in, would be to the left.
to the left, yes, sir. The VDOT, Edna mentioned the VDOT approved entrance is already there, so that will be maintained. Then we will go to the edge of the property, go straight across that second parcel, which I think is 187B or A, and then that's how we'll get to the property. Yeah. We're waiting, we have 2 contractors looking at the plans because it'll be inspected by the county. And so they have to adhere to all the provisions of the detailed drawings from Racy Engineering. So it's not just a project, it is actually designed to meet all the specs. We had it, and I have to ask Michelle, it was sent to, would Jack send that to the state?
Public water and soil, they reviewed it, made comments, corrections were made, and they approved it.
My concern would be that if there were an event and traffic were leaving on a 12-foot road, the possibility of getting emergency response in there would be 0?
No, sir, because we do have some places where we can pull off. It is wooded, but there are even now along that logging trail is places you can pull off and let somebody by without any trouble.
I'm thinking like, if there was a forest fire and everybody's getting out of there and you got yourself
We have the finest fire department in the land right beside us.
Can they fly in?
Well, we are making it available for a helipad so that emergency personnel, where it's always had a gate on it, now the gates are going away because if emergency personnel needed to use it in some capacity, they could do so.
Yeah, I understand. Has anyone spoken to people who are the actual first responders who will be using this road in that event to see what their take on it is?
The only comment that I got from them was anytime they have an asset available to them, it gives them another tool in their toolbox. They're not planning on using it, but it's nice to know it would be available. not to mention, it's one of the few flat points on the whole mountain. And
No,
we,
that's not what, no, we're talking two different things. I'm talking about getting emergency vehicles in there. If there's a lot of, we have 60 cars exiting and trying to get an ambulance in there, you're gonna be in trouble.
well, if we,
That's why I wondered if you had
Thank you.
spoken to the people who drive the,
we can always create scary scenarios. However, having an event that even came close to 60 cars would be unique, extremely unique. The church runs 48 on a Sunday morning. And if you know much about churches, the real attenders show up on Sunday morning, but the ones who do all the work only show up on Sunday night and special events. So that's about 20%. So having 6 to 10 cars is a healthy plenty for most of the activities and events that we would have. Some events and activities, when they're done correctly, you don't have everybody there the whole time because you lose the effectiveness of being able to connect with them and minister. We're not an entertainment system. Our entertainment. We're not trying to do shows and fun things. We're trying to connect with neighbors and help families. So having people come and go for an event is more important to us than having a crowd show up at one time. So we do not anticipate any major crowds maybe once a year. When we have had an event that assembled a bunch of people, we actually had off-duty sheriff deputies on site at our cost to make sure things were orderly and the roads stayed clear for evacuation or people coming in if they needed to. So clogging the road is not something we would want to do for our own services because that would even limit our guests from attending one of our events.
Right, you're assuaging some of my anxiety here.
I'm doing what to your anxiety?
You're assuaging some of my anxiety.
Is that a good thing or a bad
That's
thing?
a good thing.
Thank you. That was a term I wasn't used to. Thank you.
Okay, well, I mean, I like the idea of having off-duty policemen there to control traffic, especially as the road down, the Headwaters Road is so narrow. I think that also presents, and that can't be something that you can't do anything about that.
People go back and forth on the road all the time. Some of our members live on the road. You just have to be careful. And we're fortunate that our drive is the second one on the right. Mr. Bidito is the first one, and then this is the drive next to it that would give access. So they're not having to go all the way down the road itself.
And you're on the same side of the road?
Yes, sir.
Headwaters?
Yes. I oppose.
We're gonna, okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, he's on the same side of the road? Yes.
Yes, we are on the same side of the road, yes.
But I did notice that of all the approvals and disapprovals that we received, that on the actual Headwaters Road itself, only 3 were in support of your project. I was just wondering, are those 3 between at your end of the road, or where are they located, your supporters that live on the road?
Some of them are in here.
No, located on the road,
Okay.
directly across.
Directly across is Maybelle, and she is the one whose family sold the property to a lot of individuals. I'm not going to put words in her mouth. She told me she's on the fence. She says, I want the road cleaned up and the trash removed from across my house. That's what she's hoping for. And I said, well, we would agree with you on that. So I'm not going to speak for Maybelle at all. She had knee surgery and can't come to the meeting. Miss Jessie, are you here? You want to speak? You're one of the property owners.
Wait a minute, excuse me.
One at a time. Yes.
Okay. You asking me who lives.
No, I just-
Jesse, who else lives on the road besides you, Jesse?
Bobby Joe and Wayne Lake, they live right beside me, right across from the property. I will speak for him and Bobby Joe, they have no problem at all with our ability to being able to use our property.
Her neighbor said that she's no problem at all according to her.
Yeah, see, The other problem I have is also a safety problem, and that is with the narrowness of Headwaters Road itself. I mean, there's one spot where it only goes inches beyond 13 feet, which is really kind of just one lane, really. I mean, there is and there's a house so close to the road, you couldn't go an inch closer to that without, you know, it's already, you know, setback issues with their, you know, granted.
Well, if you travel Chester Gap area, that is what you find throughout the mountain area.
Right.
Our people are accustomed to that. Most everybody I've ever met, coming and going, there's one who will move into a driveway. It's just courtesy, and people are very accustomed to it on that part of our town.
The reason I asked about the property owners was that if one of your supporters was the person with the road was narrow, maybe they could grant the state an easement, and since they want to clean up the property.
My heart hope is we never have to make another application again, so I'm not going there.
That might get her off the fence. I don't know. You know, that's your problem, not mine. I just was curious about that.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You're currently doing events there with the church now. I mean, I from what I understand, for the past few years, there's been events being held there, correct?
On the lower part, we've had campfires, things, simple things, sunrise services, yes. But it was on level and rocky, and actually we have a couple copperhead snakes that we don't really like that much. And so the idea of having a flat field that we can better maintain, the rocks are removed. We had a permit to do the leveling, so that was all taken care of. And that gives us a better, safer area for children to play and run. The church has seeded and strawed the whole area. And I appreciate Edna telling you about the 200 by 200, but the functional area is 150 by 120. The functional area. You had to create the banks and all that. So it is a 200 by 200. We disturbed with permit 200 by 200. But our net usage area is 150 foot by 120 approximately. And those were in your latest drawings that we sent you. So that automatically limits the size of any tent or anything you do.
The front is basically parking and the back is a fence.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yeah.
And can you compare for me, kind of the size and scope to what you've previously been doing over the last 5 to 10 years versus what you're applying for?
Sure. Okay, I've got members here all around me. A sunrise service, well, we had, I think, 18 this year.
Okay.
And that was a really good group. Vacation Bible School, we have 54 kids, and they come in carpools. We'd love to have some activity areas because they really have nothing at the church. And for those of you that know the church, we only own the space right in front of the church where the sign is. All that grass that they keep up, we don't own. It's for probably weeks now. There's been a mobile home on it. We can't do anything about it. The person who owns the property can do what he wants to do with it. So we lose space significantly if there's some use of that property. I'm trying to think. We had a couple of men's events, 7 men. So the numbers have never been great. Our most successful event of late was 2 years ago. We did, for first responders, an alternative to Halloween on a night other than Halloween. So many first responders have to work on Halloween evening. And so this is, again, an event that started at 5:30 and went to 8:30. So at any one time, we would only have 40 or 50. We bragged on having 200 people show up, but that was over the span because parents would bring their children. They would do the events, no charge, even for the event. They bring individual wrapped candy. That's what they get at every little event. They all win. And then once they've done the cycle, they will leave. And that's pretty much the standard for what any formatting would be. You have to deal with also not only the safety, but also personal comfort. We have to rent, I call them porta potties, I don't know what you call them here, but we have to have those available for any large event. So you can't just do a thrust of individuals at one time. It just doesn't work.
In the current environment, it might be prudent to have hand washing facilities. Do they, those same
The
people?
ones we rent have those in there already. Yes, sir. They do.
Can I ask you, what is the surface of the road gonna be?
Gravel.
Gravel.
Yes, ma'am.
And, you know, I feel like I'm getting two bites at the apple here, but I've gone up again, and I am concerned about the Vitta's water and how you're gonna keep sediment or whatever other material might interfere with the
Well, we
quality
did
of
the
water.
leveling. We adhered to the plans that the county and the state required. The road requires that it's more than a 10% grade, has to have full rock, and they also required, I think it's 2 culverts in that piece there. So the culverts then direct to the rock, absolutely, yeah.
Sharon, do you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions. This is Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
And am I cleared to go?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So, sorry because it's kind of in and out on my end. So, it looks like I have questions about the road. It looks like to me the road, looking at your photo, it looks like the road is going to be gravel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And going back to I do see that you have a erosion and soil plan on there, but going back to 2009, Soil and Conservation asked for a stormwater retention pond. Is that, my understanding is that did not happen. Is that true?
They did not build the building. Had they paved the parking lot, built the building, there would have been a requirement for a retention pond. We're not proposing any building at all.
Okay, very good. And I think I did hear someone else mentioning the water for the Vitta's. I am also very concerned with that. What is your mitigation for going down that very steep slope towards their spring?
Okay, we are abandoning the road that is currently there. We don't own that road anymore. It's a logging trail, so we are much further up, and we'll be in compliance with the erosion plan approved by the state that diverts water away from his property, not even near the stream.
Right, okay. I think I got the gist of what you were saying. On my end is cutting in and out, so it's a little tough to follow you. Okay, I think that's it for now.
Okay, I've got a few questions here. First off, in regards to the parking, we requested a site plan from you all to lay out exactly where the parking was going to be or whatever. And you basically said to us, the document dated 5/16/2022 from Racy Engineering. And on this site, you have laid out 134 parking spaces.
I asked him to put a parking place anywhere he could on our property. For when we were dealing with the other hearing, there was this fear that we were going to park cars on Headwaters property. And so taking the absolute dream of dreams, I figure you overplan, you can meet the demands. So we paid Racy Engineering to find every cubby hole we could put a vehicle. Because we didn't know what you were going to ask, and what your expectations were. But we show clearly it's easy to park 60 cars if that was the capacity we were going with from the other meeting. So we're just simply trying to exceed any requirements to show we can easily comply with those.
Okay, well, basically, having submitted this plan, the soil and water people suddenly had some concerns over this. In that, I know you've been dealing with them, but when they saw this, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. So, I mean, basically, we asked for a site plan, and this is what you gave us.
Okay,
And there's
first, you asked for a site plan 1 week before this meeting, and I had to jump through a tremendous number of hoops to get you some information, and I did the best we could.
No, we didn't ask for the site plan 1 week before the meeting.
No, I did.
He
It
did,
was
yes.
more than, it was probably, it was 2 weeks.
But it doesn't, that's a requirement of the application that we have an active site plan.
And we had no plans on creating formal parking, but just trying to react and respond effectively to the other set of public hearings, showing you how parking could be done. We see no need for that kind of parking.
But it's on your site plan.
That is not a site plan that I am petitioning anybody to approve. I'm giving you general working information because it seemed to be the prevailing thought. Don't park on headwaters, and where would you park cars? I'm just trying to give an intellectual conversation here, not a plan of attack.
But we're bound by your plan as to be the thing we're approving.
I'll be glad to take that sheet back and throw it away.
At least at this point, we haven't changed anything yet.
Yeah. I don't mind retracting that because we have no intention of putting 100 cars up there. Having 100 people having people to park 100 cars is more bodies than I have in the church combined, including my children. I'm not going to let them be parking cars.
Okay, my next question would be in regards to the proposed tent area.
Okay, what about it?
At the public hearing for the planning commission, you referenced a 120 by 40 foot tent. Is that correct?
That is correct. Which requires a permit to put up.
Correct.
They asked what do we plan on using it?
I'm asking the question.
Okay.
What's the capacity of a tent that size?
Well, it's according to how you configure it. When we do Harvest Festival with the boys and girls and all the booths, probably 45 to 50. Because you've got all the booths, the game areas. And they walk in a 5 foot wide aisle to go from one activity to the next. Each activity area is an 8 by 8. If you were to do a concert, you have to put a stage in based on a musical group or something. And again, I'm just telling you what I do events. You're not going to get, maybe, if you had every seat packed and you put seats everywhere you could, including to the back, which you do not do with a tent, because if you get a blowing rain, they get drenched. So you have to have a perimeter around the back of the tent, around the edges. You probably get about 80 people in a tent with the staging.
Okay, a 40 by 120, this is from Tent Guy's tent capacity chart. A 40 by 120 foot tent is 4,800 square feet.
Mhm.
And according to these folks, for theater style seating, which is 6 square feet per person, capacity is 800 people.
Did they tell you how big the stage is?
For a sit-down dinner with 12 square feet per person, that would include tables and everything, that's 400 people. This is, and it's basically on this list, it's the largest tent they have. So
We try to put the porta potties underneath the tent, and you're going to put a lot of space between those because they have a aromatic effect. You also have to realize that if you were asked an architect how many people a building will hold, it is literally cheek to cheek, side by side, and that isn't, that's their marketing scales. And yes, you can do that, but you're not going to be comfortable using it. not at all.
I'm looking at a revival where you don't control the number of people who show up. I mean, you're not going to turn people away, to my knowledge. Basically, you're going to have your revival, and who shows up, and so that's.
The church couldn't afford 800 chairs to rent for a day, much less an event like a revival. Can't afford it. We don't have chairs. We don't have tables. We have to rent any of that stuff. So we're going to rent 100, 150 chairs, something like that, because not everybody wants to sit side by side. Families want to sit together. So I appreciate their tables. I'm a consultant, I get that, but that's not practical for what we're talking about. And when we said the 120 by 40, we thought we had a 200 by 200 flat surface. And I clarified that today. We have a 120 by 150 flat surface, so that tent may have to be dramatically changed because in addition to the footprint of the tent, you also have to have the outrigging of the cables and the stakes. So we got to go a different way probably.
Michelle had a question.
Donnie, would you like to?
I would like to make a point that you were at the planning commission meeting, correct, the night of the public hearing?
Yes, I was.
Right, okay, so I have it up on the screen, they set a recommendation of maximum of 60 cars, so let's keep in mind their recommendation, what they've already put forward to you, and second, anybody can come into the county office, pull a permit for a tent, we don't care what size it is, put it on the property, there's no control over it. I just want to make that point.
I have a question about buses.
You can't get a bus out
Maybe
of
you're
here.
right.
This is
I
ridiculous.
mean, you could bring a lot of people, but if 60 vehicles, probably you need to bring a lot of people. But I mean, I'm not saying you're going, and you don't have any plans for that, but, you know, I
Okay,
just
so
wanted to
the
point out
buses come when you have high dollar performers. We're not doing performances, we're doing ministry. And so our people don't get $4,000, $5,000 to do a concert or something like that.
Well,
A revivalist does not get paid except what people give out of their pocket.
But yeah, I'm not sure that relates to your concerns, but I'm wondering what's the stage you're talking about, amplified stage things?
Just a platform to raise them up over so people can see them. Yeah. And if there was a bus show up, we'd have to park it at the church and carpool them down.
Well, I mean, I don't, they could get up there, but I think
Yes.
maybe a 12-foot road might be a little bit tricky,
Yeah, and the
especially for
Harvest Festival, which is the only large event that we have on the horizon, we have a hayride that the tractor comes down, stops, lets kids off, they go one way, he goes down another place and picks up, and then they drive them up to the mountain, up to the spot.
And in your festival, they have, like you say, your booths are about 8 by 8, and so I would figure what's that, about 30 at the most you could get in
I
there?
think that's about 30, what we had 2 years ago. Yeah. And the booths are strictly 4 by 8 foot wide with 2 panels, and so we store them, and then they open it up, and then put a rebar with a root, and that makes the 8 by 8. So, yeah. And they do ring tosses and Esther's rings and stuff like that. Simple stuff for the children. We have a preschool area that's a safe zone for them so that they don't get trampled by even grade school children. That's in there for them as well.
Let me
I
correct
have
that.
a picture.
We only had 18 booths. We had a big cakewalk area, we had the toddler area. Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah, we had it up at the farm ground.
Yeah, yeah. Let them see it, if you don't mind. I love people who have all the cameras.
One of them.
We don't allow scary masks. The children can wear a costume but not a mask because this event is not to be scary or for any child at all.
This has been at your church or this?
We used the fire compartment area.
This is this tent you envisioned.
Yes. This one here was 40 by 100.
Okay, so you still have, you just said you have electricity up there already?
Yes, we got a permit approved, and we have underground power from Headwaters Road to the pad already, underground and connected.
Where's the box?
On the side of the hill, up there on the,
Oh, is that where that sign is?
yes, it's not a sign, it's
Or-
there,
That's your, okay.
that's the panel box, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how, I mean,
Yeah, see, there's
I've got
what's it?
questions on the logistics of all this, and that you've got power source here, you've got a tent, you've got power cords. I mean, how are you powering all this for revivals or whatever? I mean,
It's like
no,
any-
no air conditioning or anything?
No,
Just-
no,
you're
no,
just
strictly
gonna have-
lights.
You're just gonna have 60 chairs and inside the 40 by 120 foot tent.
I'm not gonna say it's 140 by 20 foot at this point, 40 by 120 at this point, because now that we know what our usable space is, we have to redesign also. And the tent, when you're using power, you design the activity field so that you have direct access and children and people don't cross over your power lines. Anyone who's seen a carnival or anything like that in the city, they know how to do this. You literally back up that service box so that it's at the back of your activity, not at the front. It's just a logical way of setting up an event.
Okay, and also I would like to go back to the road. Because my career was in fire service. And I'm aware of what it takes to get in and out. I'm also aware of traffic problems and whatever. And quite honestly, what I see, this road is 14 feet wide. And it's basically a road that is used by the residents to transverse back and forth. It was, and I don't know for a fact, but I expect that it's an undersized, it's a state route 666, but it's only 14 feet wide. That's very unusual. The road I live on, which is a paved in place road, which is normally the minimum width paving for a state route by VDOT, is 18 feet wide. And I've been on the road, and it is very difficult for two vehicles to pass coming in opposite directions. My concern is, from an emergency standpoint, is that when you have an event, you're going to have people leaving, and they're going to back up on Headwaters Road at the intersection of Chester Gap. Now, if someone on Chester Gap Road requires emergency services or whatever, it is going to be virtually impossible for the emergency vehicles to get down that road without getting all the vehicles that are backed up there off that road, which is going to cause a time delay. It's also going to be an inconvenience to the people that live on the road. If they come home if they come home at the time where one of your events is getting out, they're going to have to sit out on Chester Gap Road and wait for all these people to leave before they can get to their house. And the road just will not accommodate heavy traffic. And part of our responsibility here is to whether it's going to be a disruption to the people that live in the area. And this is going to create a disruption, and it's something that we have to look at very carefully.
Well, Ron, I'd like to ask you to also consider that we have smart enough people that we can secure the right type of people in the streets if we have a big event. Now, when we have off-duty officers, they are duly licensed, they're in uniform with the car and the lights, and they can help with the egress and regress from an event.
Where are these officers coming from?
Well, the last time I called Sheriff Compton.
church members as
Church
well.
mem-
We
the
have
church-
two
What?
church members that are deputies.
We have deputies within our church. But,
From which department?
Rappahannock.
Okay.
and I talked to Connie the last time, and we had 2 officers, actually, we had 3 officers at one time. Asked for 1, got 3 with the vehicles, having them there.
Okay, and do you pay these officers?
Yes,
It's interesting.
It's reassuring.
because I'm very cognizant of safety and order. And I mean, we had, and I'm not playing it here, I just want you to know, your moment of silence for those children is noted and very important. But any event we have children, I don't want a child abducted. The best place for a non-custodial parent or grandparent to get a child is at a church event. That is the best place. And I take that very seriously. And we have a safety group, and we use officers in uniform to make sure we have a visual presence as a deterrent. So I see no issue if we know that we've got a capacity crowd or a big crowd, having them as we start to break, because you are correct, it's all one way, coming in and then all going out. Have the officer at the road, if there's an emergency, we have a fire department. If they fire up their alarms, we're going to stop traffic so nobody goes into Chester Gap. We appreciate our volunteer fire department and those that work up there. We're not going to create a hindrance for them. We're going to partner with them. And it would not surprise me as we get special events going, like the one for first responders, they're going to be on site anyway.
There's not even a place where the road narrows there, there's not even a place to pull over. You can't even get off the road because it's down into a ditch. We have maybe 18 inches of shoulder on one side and that's forested. And the other side is a deep ditch, which the first person
Correct.
without
But if you need to move
about-
traffic, officers with radios can say, stop everybody on Chester Gap, move this line out now. And they move it right on out.
And if you have officers there with coordinating traffic, that assuages my anxiety again, thank you.
I'm sorry, but we don't have that kind of personnel in Rappahannock County. There are off, I mean, we have on-duty officers, but to have sufficient off-duty officers coming in and they're on their off time
They're volunteering to work, not actually volunteering to volunteer, but they're volunteering
Well,
to
they
work,
can't,
am I right?
they cannot volunteer, when you are a civil service employee, you cannot volunteer your time in the jurisdiction that you are employed in. You can volunteer your time in another jurisdiction.
I mean, they
So-
just agree to work those hours. They just agree to work that shift, I'm saying.
they're getting paid on a private basis. They're getting paid on a private basis.
So I get it.
And there are also,
And they have also cars.
and also, because I worked in civil service, there are also workers' compensation questions in these situations. And that if they are working for a private individual and they're injured, they're not covered by workers' comp. This is why, particularly with the fire departments, that you cannot volunteer. If you're a paid personnel, you cannot volunteer in the jurisdiction that you work in. You can be a volunteer in any other jurisdiction, but even then, you can't really respond into the jurisdiction that you work in because of workers' comp issues. And so those are the rules, and that's the way the system works. But we have 2 sheriff's deputies normally on duty at any one time, other than the officers and the people in administration. But so they can't be available for these events and be patrolling the rest of the county. So I don't,
No, they would have to be doing overtime or something.
It
It's not
sounded to me that was a proffer that the church was willing to give and something that's precedent, that they've used before.
Yeah.
So I think it's simply that, it is what it is.
Okay.
Can we just visit real quick the planning commission's conditions of approval, just to level set a little bit? Michelle, if you don't mind bringing that back up.
Sure.
So the conditions of approval, coming out of the planning commission was 8 events per year with a maximum of 20 days, excluding setup, tear down of the event, a maximum of 60 cars, where an event is defined as greater than 20 people. And further staff conditions were only outdoor recreation and services permitted. Any new permanent structure would need another permit, but that does not apply to temporary tents. 8 events to take place in a calendar year, compliance with all state and local laws, and the property shall not be rented out to anyone. So just to kind of set some parameters here in the discussion. And I imagine out of those 8 events per year, I mean, it sounded like the one where you had off-duty police officers. I mean, it was one of the larger events.
It is a larger event, yes. Yeah. And with all the children, it's even a more demanding event because you have to have a lot of supervisions. Parents, I know you can't believe this, will drop kids off and leave them, even though they're not supposed to. So we have to have a tremendous number of volunteers in addition to other people around to make sure children stay. We even put netting, the orange kind of like chain link fence, but it's orange. We put that around the entire perimeter so someone cannot come into the zone and someone cannot leave that zone unless we know about it. We purchased 15, I think, radios so that our people who are not running an event but running the safety and security of the event can have conversations, and they are strategically located around the tent so that if a child seems to be in distress in any way, we can act upon it.
And we just can't have that event every year. It's too much for us.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the times. If 20 people is considered an event, then less than 20 people can be there with no problem, and I don't see a problem with that, but there won't be any toilet facilities there for people. When there are less than 20 people, are we going to have people using the woods to relieve themselves? I mean, is there a possibility of having something there on a one-time basis? Just for
No,
the sake
that
of
would be building a building, and that would require a permit, and we're not going
I'm
there.
telling you, just the same people bring in regularly, they could leave one.
And we pay a rental fee for every hour we use it. So if they want to leave one and let us just have it there, maybe, but I don't think I want a porta potty on site regularly, because we're not inviting people to the land. We've got to due diligence. We can't have somebody getting onto the property and getting hurt. It looks like we invited them onto it.
Right, but you can have 20 people there anytime you want, no problem with this.
And the church is right up the road, too. They get in the car and go back to the church. And we'll get Miss Maybell and Miss Jessie to open up their front doors and they run right across the street.
We can make that happen.
I'm also, you made reference to the fact that on the road, that you would be doing the road, but you haven't been able to find anyone, a contractor.
I haven't got to find a contractor yet. We have them being bidded right now.
I was wondering, I'm curious as to who did the land disturbing on the area that is presently cut
Okay.
out?
Mike Math. And he's having health issues.
Okay, that's who did it.
Okay.
we talking to right now, it's Chris Grady. He's already doing a job from church, yeah.
And Mr. Settles,
And
Settle Construction, are the ones looking at the plans currently to bid on. They have to meet the requirements for certified land disturber, so that cuts the pickings pretty thin.
And with what has been done, I was up there yesterday because I was curious because it was raining, and I wanted to see what things look like in the rain, because that's one of the things that we need to consider or whatever. And
Is my grass growing up there?
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Thank you.
That is the problem. No, that is the problem, because there is no grass on the sloped surfaces.
Oh, on the side.
And that's a
You need
clear, I mean,
something.
that's a clear violation of the state
Okay, we planted,
requirement.
that's why I was asking, we did sow the grass on the slopes all around, and that means that we have to put some more up there, but they were all taken care of.
No, they weren't. That's what I'm saying, is I was up there, when was the grass planted?
2 or 3 weeks.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
And I was up there, and I'm the sorry rascal with a few people that did put it there, so you may not think it was there, but I
I'm
walked
not
up
saying
there.
that it wasn't there.
Okay,
I'm
thank
saying
you, you
that
said it was.
You've got a lot of grass growing on the flat surface, but there's no grass growing on the
We
slope
sowed it
surfaces,
on the banks and the top
and
banks.
it all washed off.
It may have, which means we'll have to put some more back up there.
Well,
And the county is still inspecting the site, so it's up to the county to enforce it.
I'm sorry, did you say that?
The county is still inspecting the site,
I
our
would hope they would,
EMS.
I'm really pointing it out.
I'm pointing that out.
There are other plants that are more assertive about retaining dirt and grass that you might consider. an
The silk
alternative.
fences are still in place.
Right?
The silk fence is still in place.
Yeah.
I fear that we're venturing into areas that are
Yeah,
not
it's
our
pretty
responsibility.
No, it's not, well, it is as far as the
It's not the church. The road, the main road is not the church responsibility.
main
You
road.
keep on, Headwater Road.
Keep on about Headwaters Road,
That is not
But-
church
but
responsibility.
nobody has ever stopped the building up above with the houses, so there's cars passing on that road all the time.
And the fire truck passing on the road.
Being too much of a back and forth here with the
Let's
public
just do
hearing,
one
so
person at a time.
one
If
person
you're
at a
finished,
time,
we can-
please stand and
Yeah.
identify
Any
yourself.
more questions
I
for
will
me?
when he gets done.
I have one question, Nancy.
Yes, sir.
Would you object to having the water tested, the visitor water tested after a year of use?
Not if certain conditions are met, but I could be blamed for something I have absolutely no impact over. If a deer urinates in his stream right before they take the water test, I could be penalized. There's no control there. Somebody up above us could contaminate the water, and we get blamed for it. If we go on record being totally responsible for his stream, can't do that, because I have no control over his property either. Now, if he wants to sell it to us, we can have a conversation.
How long are you going to be involved in this project?
Till I die?
Because you don't, you
Why is
live
that?
6 hours away. now.
That's okay, I commute in, that's not your concern, sir, that's my concern. I am a retired pastor who is passionate about reaching Chester Gap for Christ. And I'm gonna stay as long as they need me. And when we do leave, we're gonna hand it off to somebody who's just as passionate as I am. Because I am never gonna lead a church into spending what we've had to spend to level a piece of dirt.
Exactly.
I mean, the thousands of dollars we have spent. I'm good with spending money, but I want to get a return on investment. And so I'm here for the long haul.
So, question, would you be willing to agree, well, I would like to require this as a condition, that the permit be reviewable in a year, and that it not convey with the property if it were to be sold?
She said not to convey, the property cannot be sold with these types of conditions.
No, that what we are, if we are to approve this, that the permit would not convey with the property if you sell it to someone else.
The area that we're working on, the church has voted unanimously not to sell that property. They're not selling, but that's fine.
There's a for sale sign in.
Great.
That's not the property you're talking about. We do have one parcel that is for sale, but it is not this parcel here at all.
So to reiterate Sharon's 2 points, hers was suggesting conditions, one being subject to review. Sharon, I fear that there is no kind of consideration in the ordinance for reviews. So I think in order to achieve the same result, it would be a time-based permit in that it would last for a year and then they would have to come back and reapply all over again. There isn't a provision for a review. And then the second piece of that was they are agreeing to tie the approval and the permit to the ownership. And that's
Okay.
standard.
Yeah.
really, for us.
Excellent.
Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to speak? And please, excuse me, please stand and identify yourself and the district that you live in.
And your opening public comment.
My name's Norma Settle. I live in the Wakefield District. I'm a member of Chester Gap Baptist Church since I was 8 years old. And I think you guys are being really tough on us. I understand the conditions with the road. I understand that. But that road has been there. I grew up. My grandparents owned the house that they live in. Okay? Traffic on that road has always been that way. Ain't nobody got hurt yet. I mean, there's been parties up the road, you know, you can't stop stuff like that, okay? If there's such a big concern with that road, I would think that someone would have addressed it with VDOT before now. Nobody has stopped the building of the homes up there. And I lived in an apartment building up at the very top. There's been homes built in there for years now. The road's never been a concern. Sure, give them permit, let the builder come in and build whatever he wants. I see that on the road that I live on. I live on Chester Gap Road. And I live in a very bad area because the road forks. It goes this way or that way. Those people roll off that mountain, okay? Nobody has stopped those builders up there because the intersection's dangerous. Okay, that makes no sense, okay? The other thing is, as far as the water runoff, there's animals all over that property. So why are those animals not polluting that water? But yet you're concerned a little bit of dirt's gonna get in there? I mean, we've done everything we can, put the silt fence up, we've done everything. As far as the EMS and the fire departments, we got first responders right here. I ran in the fire department for years. And if you can't trust the people that are in the fire departments to make the right decisions about how they need to get to where they're going, then we got a problem. The other thing is, and I hate to bring up other areas in the county, but are you as concerned about the 4th of July celebration that's getting ready to happen on Benvenue Road? How are the EMS people to get in there when you got one entrance in, one entrance
That's
out?
not really relevant to what.
Oh, yes it is, because you're comparing our situation and our road. Well, let's compare that situation. That's very dangerous. We got a whole lot more room to get up headwaters with a fire truck or an ambulance than they do coming out Benvenue Road with one way in and one way out. You got 2 sheriff's deputies. You talked about we weren't allowed to have the deputies volunteer. What are you gonna do down there? You got 2 people. We provide at least 3 or 4. So if we're taking the time and Sheriff Compton's okay with it, and we're paying them out of our pocket, why is that a concern? You know, I mean, I'm trying to be nice here, and I mean, but you all have, not you all, this county has put us through it. And we've had this property for how many years?
73.
In 73, bought it from my grandparents. And we can't put a little tent up there or 60 cars.
For worship.
For worship? I mean, it's wrong. I'm sorry. I sympathize with whatever they got going on, where they don't want the mud and the water and all that. But you got animals out there. You can't prevent the water from being contaminated.
I saw the goats.
Do what?
I saw goats.
Exactly. You don't think those goats are in that water? But yet you want us to give you.
No, we don't want, no, we want to help you.
Okay, but it doesn't seem that way. And I mean.
And mostly, but we're not trying to give you a really hard time, but we need to understand what's going on, because at some level, at some time, if something goes wrong up there, we may have some kind of legal liability. And, you know, if we approved something that was unapproachable under any circumstances and somebody died up there, but ourselves, we're not responsible. Okay, we've deliberated this, and it's a debatable thing, and under the law, we are exempt from prosecution because we're being so diligent, and that's one of the reasons why we are. We have to understand that. But by the same token, we don't want to expose the county. If the county approves something that turns out to be dangerous, and they could get, someone could say, oh, well, just my kid died up there and because they swallowed something, couldn't get the emergency, and that would cost $1 million. Well, we don't want to expose the county to things like that. Now, on some level, we can say to ourselves, okay, Headwaters Road, VDOT's approved that, so we can't really override VDOT. If they think it's okay, well, I guess it's gotta be okay, because that's not your job to fix that, and that's the situation we're set with, and it seems to be working, and the fact we'd like, with the increased traffic, we'd like to look at it again maybe in a year to make sure that they haven't been a lot ahead on accidents or something, I don't think is unreasonable. But you have to see, we're not really trying to give you a hard time, but we have a lot of fannies to cover here. And one of them is just the county itself and their liabilities. And I'd be curious when you're finished to speak to the people who are waiting party, who are the first responders, and just to get what they think about the takeout. That's a third of a mile up to that place. That's a third of a mile on a 12-foot side road. You have to be really serious about having places to pull off. You can't. I mean, if you got bumper traffic, everybody just can't go like that off the road, and somebody might have to get by, and I just want to make sure that nobody's going to get hurt, because I couldn't live with that. I mean, I would have a really hard time every day after that if some decision that I was a party to ended up having somebody, especially some child, be hurt irrevocably, perhaps.
And I can sympathize with what you're saying, and I understand.
And we're all in the same boat with wanting to watch how.
But you need to understand.
Children, okay?
For how many years now has EMS and fire in this county been volunteer? There is nothing to say we won't have volunteer rescue squad or fire truck on the scene when we have something. You didn't ask that question.
Oh, okay.
And that happens.
It's okay.
That happens.
That was in my list of things to ask.
Okay, I'm a member at
First
Flint
aid
Hill.
facility.
I was a member at Chester
That's why I wanted to
Gap.
speak to the first
Okay.
responders.
So there is nothing to say that we won't enlist their help, that there will be someone on site, just like at the 4th of July celebration. They will be on site. Point-to-point races, we're on site.
What?
We will have people on site if needed.
There was 2 nurses on site at the fall festival, 2 registered nurses.
Okay, this is,
Yeah,
Let's
we
be
need
one-on-one.
just one-on-one and take one person at a time.
I mean,
Let's get through
we
it.
will have those volunteers because that's what this county's made up
You're
of.
saying that they will bring to your events, when you have over 20 people, they'll bring a
Absolutely.
vehicle there and have it parked there as a first aid station?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to
This
see
gentleman
that in
here,
the
this
provisions.
gentleman here was chief of Flint Hill for 30 years.
Yeah, I'll
And
work
I'm
on it.
sure he has
That's
no
a
problem.
great idea, and I'd like to see it locked into the provisions. So
Oh, absolutely.
Stop. Y'all are not gonna negotiate.
Oh, no, but what I'm saying
No,
is,
you wanna,
but what I'm saying is, there is no reason that we could not enlist about.
this is not a discussion between members of the audience. We're trying to hold a public hearing here,
let me
please.
help you. We have insurance, lots of insurance. Our insurance provider is made aware of special events. Special events get a rider. Riders, based on proposed numbers, require certain stipulation because our insurance company does not want to be at fault. Now, that is a fluid decision. I'm happy to help, but I am not comfortable with y'all negotiating that I have to have an emergency vehicle when I got 7 people up there and 6 of them walk.
7 people doesn't include, we're talking 20 people now as an event, and I would just wonder.
So
my
every
question-
group that has 20, you're gonna have,
May I ask you, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Okay.
Will there be some kind of, when there are that number of people, will there be some kind of first aid kit there?
Yes.
I mean, can we bandage people up?
Yes.
Can we run it,
We have nurses, we have triage.
Or something, I mean, you know.
We have triage.
So I'm just worried about the safety of the people who are there, and I don't think that's.
Our
unreasonable.
insurance company requires that also.
Well, insurance doesn't really count, because it's after the fact, when somebody's.
No, no, sir, to get the rider, you have to agree.
This is getting way out of
Okay,
spectrum.
To get the rider, you have to
Let's
agree.
cut this off.
To answer your question, we have registered nurses in our church. They were on site when we had the fall festival.
Right.
So safety is not an issue, and I'm not negotiating for the church.
You've got it covered, but I just need to
Right.
understand
Right.
that you do have it covered,
Right.
and that's all we're trying to accomplish.
Right, I understand.
And I think you're doing a good
And
job.
I'm not
I
trying to
think
be
we're
disrespectful,
Okay, let's
but
have,
I just think you guys are just like this lady here said, you're getting way off track. I mean, we've already been pre-approved to move to this level.
Right, okay.
So you all need to stick to what they are asking you to approve,
Right.
not going off somewhere else.
Well, we have
that's,
conditions. we have-
you don't want to get, that's not part of the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you.
You'll see the purpose of this later.
Who else would like to speak?
My name is Whitney Billington. I actually live in Warren County on one of the adjoining properties. And I'm not opposed to the church building a area up there. I think it's a great idea. I do have some major concerns. You mentioned the helipad and the fact that the property used to be gated and it will no longer be gated. And on this document right here, the property shall not be rented out to anyone. So gating off a property prohibits access. And if you remove a gate, it's a lot more difficult to prohibit access. I'm right below this pad site. And I hear firearms at an alarming rate coming from that pad site. And I don't believe that this zoning is for a shooting range. I am concerned, having livestock, having my house, me being on the property, with somebody coming on there with unfettered access and shooting in what direction, I don't know, okay? If your liability, or your insurance company is going to require, all these other things, I would probably be certain that they would not cover anything if there's unfettered access, if there was something that happened with somebody shooting firearms up there.
Okay.
And again, with
No
access
answers.
to the property, opening up as a medevac site, again, a gravel road 12 feet wide isn't going to allow access for an emergency vehicle to get up there at a high rate of speed for this helicopter. I mean, can you get up there? Absolutely. Is it ideal? I wouldn't say so. There's other places like the 4-H center that has flat areas that can be used. There's plenty of other fields around. I don't see opening it up as a spot for first responders and also anybody else that wants to access that property legally or illegally, okay? I don't see how that's gonna be a safe environment for the community. Okay, I'm just one direction, but there's, I don't remember how many other pieces of property adjoining this property, but where are those rounds going, okay? I'm worried for my safety, I'm worried for my neighbor's safety, and I'm worried about, is the church gonna be able to retain this property, or are they gonna get sued because somebody gets hurt, okay? It's a great idea, I love it, and I wanna see it work, okay? But I am concerned about my safety and other safety, and that's why I'm here today. So, thank you.
Mr.
May I
Billington,
share something with them, please?
Mr.
No.
Billington, can you repeat your first name?
Whitney.
Okay.
We've had a
Anyway,
tremendous-
excuse me, you're up. We're on.
I thought you said I couldn't tell
No,
you.
No, I said
Everybody
please.
speaks once until the.
We can't have
somebody speaks a second
conversations.
time.
No problem.
We don't have conversations going back and forth between, out there in the audience or the citizens. Mr. Bitterton.
My name is Jim Litito. I guess I'm in the Wakefield district. I live at 8 Waters Road. I also am here to speak for Forrest Johnson, who lives in 29 Headwaters Road, who wanted to be here, but he had to go away out of state this morning. And his comments first, he and I are the two houses that will be most affected by this. My house, Mabel's house, and Forrest's house. Forrest's house faces immediate driveway where they come in off Headwaters Road. He was very upset when I told him that they were possibly going to approve events that could have as many as 60 cars, and that they were also going to be putting in more parking lots. And he was very upset about it, and he said he did not move to a dead-end road to have them do this to him. So those were his words. He's very upset about it because he'll be the one dealing with the traffic. I will be the one dealing with the traffic. Maybell is on the fence about the traffic. Regarding the spring is actually a spring house. It's enclosed. I don't draw my water from a stream. But livestock is not the concern. The concern is the disturbance of the earth above it, begetting undue sediment, runoff, gasoline, whatever, from the roads, and the roads being disturbed and causing undue sediment that can come down and affect the street. And I was told by the health department that any building had to be at least 120 feet from my spring house. I'm not sure if that's done yet. And I know that what VDOT requires for a road doesn't necessarily include what the sediment control officer said in that letter earlier about all the different precautions being taken. When I looked at that map up there, it looked like a new road and possibly a parking lot were right on my property line, which at that point becomes very steep, and my spring house is right down there at the bottom. I had not yet seen anybody come out and survey my spring houses compared to where they're actually putting the road in, and what exactly are they doing to keep that runoff and sediment from coming down my spring house. That said, I'd like to read this statement. It has been inferred that because this board approved the mega church for this property back in 2012, that they are obligated to approve the special use permit. I contend that that project should never have been approved and was done so without adequate public input. It is my hope that the BZA members will look at what is before them now without reference to the past. Now I ask, what is the purpose of zoning a community as a residential village, but to ensure a peaceful community and protect the neighborhood from the intrusion of developments that will rob the neighbors of that peace and in effect decrease the value of their property and the quality of their life? That is one of the first questions on the application. Will it decrease the property of the surrounding, the value of the surrounding properties? I don't think anyone can rightly argue that the potential intrusion of up to 60 cars, plus trucks hauling porta-johns, food vendors, and whatnot, and the ensuing noise of traffic and loudspeakers on every weekend of good weather is not an unwelcome intrusion. It will adversely affect property value and the quality of the lives of the people who will have to put up with it parading in front of their houses and occurring directly behind their homes. I also don't think there is one person in this room that would want to have this potential circus of traffic and noise surrounding their property. I believe that the approval of this special use permit will not only cause immediate disturbance to me and my neighbors, but has the potential long-term effect of greater disturbance from the aforementioned $750,000 pavilion, the concerts, wedding venue, and overflow parking lots that are been talked about. I believe that priority should be given to the established homeowners whose lives will most greatly be affected. It is my hope that share with me that conviction and will not allow the approval of this special use permit.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Biddefeld?
Yes.
Can you compare and contrast what you've observed since you've lived there? Because again, back to my reference of events occurring there. How is that different than what you see here in the application and grievances you may have had in the past?
Well, in the past, they've always had their special events and big events at the park across from the firehouse. We have not had extra traffic. We already have a traffic issue on Headwaters Road in that the cars up at the top fly down through there. And so it is very difficult and very dangerous with the amount of traffic it already has. Most cars going up the hill pull into my driveway to let the cars coming down the hill go through. So the thought of basically every weekend of good weather, a potential event of 60 cars or even 20 cars, that is an incredible increase of traffic on this little road directly in front of my house, going to the side of my house and up and around my house. And so to have it going in and coming out with all the other traffic, to me is quite a burden to have to put up with. And it totally goes against what I view as what a residential village is supposed to be. We've lived there for 24 years. We have owned our house and our home longer than the church has owned that property. And we bought that place because it was tranquil, it was peaceful, and they allowed us to raise our goats. It was zone aquaculture. And we lived there and have been good neighbors. And to me, this will destroy that peace and tranquility that we would like to enjoy during our spring, summer, and fall with this incredible increase of traffic and noise behind our house. My daughter surveyed some of the church members and they talked about concerts of 300 people. One of them talked about bluegrass, and they also talked about wedding meetings. This is from my daughter talking to different members of the church that are not here, but who are sitting on the fence and we're crazy about whether the church is going with this.
Yes.
My name is Angelica Rizzo, and I also live on 8 Headwaters Road in Wakefield. And I would like to respectfully ask the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals to vote no in regards to granting a special use permit for Chester Gap Baptist Church property. Having as many as 60 cars traveling up and down a narrow street about 20 times in a year is clearly an unreasonable hardship and hassle to place on the residents of Headwaters Road. The Planning Commission did not pass this decision on to you unanimously. Ms. Ishii, I don't know if that's how you say her name, but Ms. Ishii voted no, and she rightly pointed out that even an event of 20 cars would significantly disrupt traffic safety and the peace of neighbors due to the closed-in and bucolic nature of the location. People like my parents move here to have a safe and peaceful place to live, not to have large public events taking place in our backyard with noise and traffic congestion. It has even been suggested that law enforcement would be needed to take care of the traffic control, which would create a strain on our county's resources. I didn't realize they were off duty, but even so, we have limited police officers. The Baptist Church has a very small membership, and no one wants to prevent the congregation from enjoying their property during sunrise services, picnics, outings for the kids. So to reject this special use permit would only be stopping the church from hosting the larger and louder events they have open to the general public, including the concerts and the harvest festivals in the lake. This land is zoned for residential village use, and to allow a special use permit now sets up a precedent that will encourage commercializing our neighborhood in the future. And on a side note, I have set up landing zones numerous times. I've been involved with the Chester Fire Department for 8 years. And it is not a site that you would want to land a helicopter on because of the approach. As it stands now, if the cut a lot more trees down, possibly, but you can't just go up and down with a helicopter. You need more wider approach. So that and the difficult access would not be a benefit to the community for landing zone. And we do have a designated land use zone at the soccer field at the 4-H Center already. And all of you have received by email a petition. You all saw the petition? Okay. It was signed by 17 individuals to vote against the permit approval. And 16 of these individuals live on and directly off of Headwaters Road, including Forrest Johnson. He signed the petition. So these are the people who are being impacted by this decision. Please respect and protect their desire for upholding the integrity of our residential village community. Thank you for your consideration.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Can I address something?
Everybody gets one before anybody gets two.
My name is Andrew Williams, live in the Wakefield District, 11 Hummingbird Lane in Chester Gap. And I currently live right above the current church building itself. I am a board member at our church, and it's just been an issue with traffic up there in a lot of places. I understand your concern. I drive a heavy truck every day. I understand your concern with roads and width and passenger vehicles by each other. And I can say as driving a heavy truck every day, I drive on roads very similar to Headwaters and to the drive that would be going up to the property every day. And with passing, I can pass two heavy trucks in a small road like that. It does get a little bit more difficult, but with having lights and sirens, people, that's a thing that sets people off. Say, hey, I need to get out of the way. There's something going on. And I can totally respect the Viditos, 100%. I have no problem with them. And Jonathan and I have worked together before. I have no issues with them at all. I understand what their concerns are. My concern is that we work together as much as we can without creating issues where we have bad neighbor issues. I'm not here to stand up and say, we are going to clear land, put roads in, build buildings, hundreds of thousands of people coming into the county for concerts every weekend. That's not what we're here for. We're here to reach out to people, and our main goal is to educate people with how to be good stewards of land and neighbors, and just to be, just neighborly. That's what this county was about, was being neighborly with each other. It's a small county. We don't have big industrial centers in the county, and that's for a reason, and I can respect that. In regards to the issues of the road as well, if with this gentleman said about the ambulance and fire trucks getting up to the road in a quick manner, if that is a concern to this board, then I suggest that they look at the rest of the roads on top of the mountain that have no longer been in a HOA setting. There are roads on the mountain that I have talked to the fire chief about. The fire truck will not go down the road. If there is a fire down there, they have to drag hose from the main road down to the house. And by that time, it's a total loss most of the time. There's nothing you can do about it. The roads are washed out. There's roads up there with 4-foot deep ditches on the side that's been washed out. And because there's no HOA, nobody will take care of the roads because a lot of people can't afford to spend the extra money to have somebody come in and grade the roads out, even with community support. Everything is going up, and everybody sees that. And I can sympathize with, you all being concerned. I'm right there with you about concerns about people's safety. As far as the shooting issue that was discussed, I'm not at liberty to name names, but the property next to ours that adjoins ours does have a firing range behind his house.
Oh, I know, I shot it.
Yeah. So we can't say as a matter of fact it's coming from our property or not, but I know everybody in the church, and there's not many people that would even go down there to do that anymore. I mean, that's just, it's here nor there at this point, and I understand your concern. I sympathize with you as well. It's all about safety, and it's for us. It's not about being, Chester Gap Baptist Church, the Baptist church to come to in the area. It's not about that. It's about us doing our due diligence, keeping people safe, and also teaching them about what we believe. And with the events that we're talking about having 20+ cars, that we cannot have events 20+ cars every weekend. That's nice weather. I can say that for a fact because I volunteer 90% of the time that I can when I'm not working, and most of the time we're lucky to get 10, and that's on a good day. Because the other piece to that is, if we do have events of that nature, it is no problem for us as volunteers to carpool, pack as many people as we can in vehicles, move them down, move them back out the same way, It's not a big issue. We're not here to create issues, disturb land, and do all that just to, say that we are the best in the area. That's not what we're about. So, I mean, that's where I'm at on it. I sympathize with the water issue, and if there was something that we needed to do, that's between the church and the county, and they need to say, look, if we're gonna do this, this is what it takes. And so far, I think we've been pretty lenient as far as not giving too much rebuttal on the county coming to us and saying, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. We've steadily been jumping through hoops with no problem. We're not here to cause the county issues either, We want to be your friends and invite you up there just as much as, y'all want us to be outreaching to people. So that's my 2 cents, and I thank you for my time.
Would anybody else like to speak? Hearing none, we will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. So, comes to 5 of us. I think basically the first thing we need to do is go through the standards.
Before we do that, can I ask a clarification question
Yes,
from the administrator? I guess I'm struggling over what triggers the special use permit. Like what is it 20 people? I mean, what can by right event-wise can they do? I'm kind of, that's something that I'm just struggling to understand.
So the activity of worship on the property is what triggered the need for a special permit.
So by right, they cannot worship on the property.
If you look under each table, place of worship requires a special use permit.
Yep.
The 20 people was a random number by a planning commission member.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are no small events they can hold up there without a permit.
Okay.
Okay, and let me ask another question then, in that a place of worship is traditionally a building. And probably we've never had a request like this in Rappahannock, and I don't know if other areas have had a request for to use a piece of land with no building on it and considering it as a place of worship. In that you can, in the middle of the street, you can worship wherever you choose. That's,
But when you have a congregation all coming to a piece of property, it's a little different than what you're speaking of.
that's,
You were the
I
planning
think that's
commission,
what
we
we're
went
having
through that.
trouble with, is that if it's just the congregation, and from the information that we've been getting here, we're talking about, they have a congregation of what, you said 48 people or whatever, and all of these events are within that parameter of, one of the questions I have of Chester Gap Baptist Church is, if that's the size of the events that you have, and you've been having them for all these years in your present site, what is the need for this second site? In that, I mean, you've got, I went by last Sunday, in the parking lot, I mean, yes, there was probably 25, 30 vehicles there. It was not overcrowded. I'm not sure what the capacity of the building is. But you have a place where you can do the work that you've been doing for 50 years. And what I'm wondering is why we are suddenly having to move that to the second location, which is going to affect a neighborhood adversely, because it's going to put, the road that goes to your church is not 14 feet wide. The road that there is, it's not meant for traffic. It's one way in, one way out. The only people that use that road, other than delivery trucks or whatever, are the people who live there. And with the width of the road being what it is, they can handle that. But this is going to be an inconvenience for the people that live on that road, and that's what we have to look at.
We had problems with that for
I'm
years.
sorry.
We had come up.
I'm sorry, the public, I was asking the zoning administrator for her interpretation of the fact that to me, a special use permit for a place of worship is for a building.
Well, I made a determination, I'm zoning administrator, so
Right, okay,
there you go.
okay.
So worship, a place of worship and worshiping are the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to go to the general standard?
Before we go through the general standards, just to frame how we're looking at the standards, is the point of reference the planning commission recommendation of 8 events per year, a maximum of 20 days, a maximum of 60 cars? Because that just seems like an awful lot to me. I don't know the rest of the boards.
The conditions, I believe, would come after we make our decision. I mean, those are merely suggestions from the planning commission.
Well, let me get to my point, like, as far as if I'm looking at the impact to the neighbors, if it was 1 or 2 events a year, to me is greatly different than 8. I don't see it as a discrete thing.
Well, it depends on what the events are. I mean, but in the initial letter, the request was picnics, youth activities, sunrise, Easter service, mission projects, and then also possible July 4th and in October, maybe one Friday evening and then the Children's Harvest Festival.
Right.
Okay, so.
And I think there has to be some kind of balance of they own the property. A
Yeah.
lot of these things you can do by right.
Exactly.
Anybody else who had that property could use
Could
it.
do that, exactly.
So I mean, I think
And they could also have a wedding on their property by right.
anyone else were to have it, correct. And so I just feel like the board needs to take, there has to be, I absolutely support the neighbors and their rights and the limit to them. I am in no way in favor of what the planning commission has recommended. I think there will be a huge impact to the community, but I think the church owns the property and they have certain rights too.
Absolutely. That's
Well,
the conundrum, basically. We have to, we have before us a request for a special use permit. And I think everybody sitting at this table and Sharon agrees that, yes, there are uses that are by right. And we have no problem with that. It's the issuing of the permit, because the permit, even in the application, the word et cetera is used. Et cetera is
Oh, I hate that word.
a word that shouldn't be in an application like this, because it means nothing, it means everything, it could mean everything. And as Pastor Warman has said in the other public hearing, their interpretation of how they want to reach out to the community is ever changing. So what we do this year, we may not do next year. And that also makes it very difficult to establish any kind of limits, numbers or whatever. That, if you have a revival up there and 300 people show up, are you going to turn 200 of them away at the gate and say, I'm sorry, you can't come up? I mean, that's the question that we have to deal with.
60 cars, you have 240 people right there.
Correct.
And that is not appropriate for someone somewhere zoned village residential.
This brings up something that came up, a suggestion came up here that kind of got my ears perked up, and maybe I'd like to pursue it just really quickly, and that is, there was some talk, and I was just scumbag back there, and I don't know who was mentioning that people in the church had spoken about concerts. I think that
having like paid concerts with paid admission, having rock and roll bands and maybe more than, you know, I mean, that, we're getting,
Yeah, but they're not asking for that. Look
well,
what
they're asking for amplified music.
I mean, what they're asking for, you gotta
Is
say,
amplified.
come on, you know, having their Bible church up there.
I know, but we're worried about missionary creep here.
Excuse me, sir?
Mission creep. Mission creep, that's when you ask for something and then a person does more and, you know, then we're stuck in the position of having to do unsavory things like pull permits and things like this, which you don't want to go there. We'd rather just make sure that everything's settled by agreement and timeframe and up front.
Well, if there's a concern,
So I'm wondering, like, this recent discussion is very interesting to me in terms of what are you permitted by right? Do you even need to do what I wonder?
Yeah.
So this is, so this is what I'm sorting out right now, okay? And the thing is, if you didn't, I'm wondering that if you asked for certain things and not other things, if you just could do that as a matter of right, and then we wouldn't have anything to say about this, but the thing is then in order to do that, we would have to decide where that boundary is and.
Mr. Tiegelman, they need this permit, okay?
Right, because
So let's
they're doing this worship thing.
Yes. So let's not get into.
Whether or not they're.
Okay, so, all right, well,
But-
yeah, I
Yeah,
have a serious problem with the idea of a place of worship and worshiping in a place. I think they might be two different things, but still, that's not like, that's beside the point anyway, that's not what.
I would
make a decision on anyway.
I would also like to inject the fact that the numbers that keep coming up are 40 to 60. And I believe with the facility that they already have, that those numbers can be handled at the facilities they already have.
You can
So I
play
appreciate-
volleyball in the building?
Yeah, but
But that's not,
But
you
that's
get
not
volleyball in the building?
we don't get to decide that, that's not our.
You know, here they own this
They're
piece
asking
of
about
land
this,
for
you can't
crying
say
out loud. It's 24 acres, it's really bad.
They
You
can
know,
do- they
if
can do
I
this.
owned it and I wanted to do 4 weddings over the summer, I could do it.
Thankfully,
You know,
you'd have
so-
to have a special permit.
I would not have to have a special
Not for a
permit.
wedding.
I would have, you know, I'm not a place of worship.
That's what,
But
no, you're not a place of worship, but
people
that
have
becomes-
weddings on their properties, they don't get a special
They
permit,
do
correct?
not.
If they have a wedding.
Typically, it's a family member or a friend, but they don't have them every weekend.
Exactly.
but we, in
But these
fact,
guys aren't having anything every weekend either. I mean, the issue is that it's a
Oh,
place
potentially they could have
But
everything.
were they not a place of worship? And it's a rural residential, in a rural residential area, you can have weddings at your house.
Right.
They do it up on Headwaters Road all the time, right there at parties. The top of the place, there's probably 60 cars up there,
they don't need a permit.
and they don't need a permit. So, you know, I just say, let's be reasonable, you know, that maybe this is too many, maybe what the planning commission has is too much, but you know, how many, they're certainly using the facility, I mean, they want to have outdoor activities for their kids, they can't do it inside the church. You know,
There's a yard around the church.
it's not that
Well,
big, I mean, you've got
we
people
don't
with
have
kids,
that.
for God's
That's
sake.
not, that's
We don't
not-
own that.
that's not- we don't-
All we own is the church. We don't even own the parking lot.
But in any case, they have a right to, I mean, they should,
Right,
it should be permitted that they be able to run, you know, a camp up there with 50, you know, some, what is it, 40 kids. I mean, they own 24
That's-
acres, I just think,
But now,
rural residential, they
now you're
produce.
talking camp, and that goes into a whole different area, correct, Michelle?
She used that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
They said that I didn't, just so you know.
Yeah, I don't even.
So you're talking about camping out overnight or something, is this what we're talking about, or just?
I'm sorry, I'm
just meeting?
It's a Bible school, I'm sorry.
vacation Bible.
But although you did mention the fact that they're there could be the possibility of overnight campouts on that
A
property.
father-son, which is 4 fathers, 4 kids. 28 acres, it can accommodate that.
I didn't say it couldn't, I'm just saying that was.
But I also said clearly, we were not going to box ourselves into specifics because you do need to have flexibility in how you do things and what you do. I'll be glad to work with this board because some of the exaggerations have made me a little weary. Weekend events every weekend, not going to happen. Can't afford it. You rent a porta potty once every 4 months maybe. You just cannot logistically handle those costs. And doing scare tactics about numbers and cars and parking and all the run-up is not beneficial. And I can get most people to sign any type of permit or petition if I give them the button points that pushes their button. Now the facts are, we did not agree that we should come with a special permit, but we honored it. The Bible says that we are to submit to the authority above us, and so we did that. But the state Commonwealth of Virginia says I can worship anywhere I want to. Read the state law that trumps Rappahannock. But I'd rather have nobody coming up and calling and questioning. So we work with Michelle, and she has been phenomenal. I wish everybody has been as helpful. So give us something we can work with. We want to be a good neighbor. But we've owned that land for a very long time, and we have paid taxes on it. It did not get a religious exemption at all. We pay taxes every year. And when we realigned, we paid $2,000 last year just because we realigned some things. We are taxpayers. We should be able to come and go on our property. And y'all are worried about the driveway. We got one of the best driveways of the planet down there in the whole state, as far as the county of Rappahannock, because ours is VDOT approved.
Excuse me, your driveway is.
Our entryway to the property is VDOT approved.
Well, that's basically just where you cross off your property and go
Well, it still matters.
onto the 14-foot roadway.
Can I hear what you said?
There are no scare tactics. Everything I have said is based on what the planning commission put forward, the 60 cars, I'm talking potential, and based on their mailings, when they mentioned concerts, and based on my daughter talking to different individuals and then telling us what was being said. So it's not scare tactics, I'm not making any of this stuff up, I'm looking at potential. We have never complained about them having a sunrise service and things like that. But when they talk about $750,000 pavilions and events having 60 cars, 20 cars, those are our concerns, and that you need a permit for that because this is a residential neighborhood. This is not a place to establish a special events venue, which in my opinion is what we would be doing.
Do you take issue to things like a fall festival, sunrise services, vacation Bible school?
No, I do not take issue, depending on sunrise services or vacation Bible school. I don't know exactly how big a fall festival can become. I know that festivals around here become quite large. They just have the one in Front Royal, they have Graves Mountain. I mean, they start off small and then they become very popular. And so things that are called festivals make me nervous. What does it mean and how many events are there going to be? I'm 23 feet from the road, my house, and to have every weekend, or the potential of every weekend, a lot of traffic, 60 cars, or near that, or over 20 cars, whatever. I mean, that is a lot to have to endure.
I object, Mr. Middleton.
I'm speaking. I ain't speaking. Don't interrupt me. I'm not speaking in
Please, you'll be recognized. He's speaking.
Okay, that's all I can rebut. Thank you.
I have not said anything incorrect. What I'm saying is, all there in the commissioner's recommendation, the 60 cars, and their mailings, and as I've already said, I have not made any of this stuff up. And as I said, I'm 23 feet from the road and have to endure this kind of traffic, this potential surface of activity all around my house. I object to it, as does Forrest Johnson object to it.
I have a question.
Okay.
I keep hearing this $750,000 pavilion statement, and I see eyes roll and people going exasperating, and I'm just wondering where that comes from and how that's.
Pastor Orman said that during the planning commission, at the last planning commission, that they were talking about a $750,000 pavilion. And he had told me personally, at the corner of my property, that they were planning on building a pavilion. He didn't say the cost at that point, but at the planning commission. So I know, and he also talked about big dreams, and he talked about several times publicly about a pavilion that would have restroom facilities and all that. So to me, that is crossing over to a possible special events need.
Michelle.
If you notice, one of the conditions on the permit is that nothing can be built.
Yeah.
That would require another permit. So this pavilion is not allowed.
Yeah, that's,
Let's make that
that's
clear.
serious, at least as far as this.
So actually what it says is nothing can be built without applying for another permit.
Exactly.
Right, so right now they could not build a pavilion.
So that's.
In the application, under future impact or whatever, they say right here, no additional plans in the next 5 to 10 years.
So if
But
they
that
want
doesn't
it,
mean that 5 years from now, they're gonna come back.
it'd
They-
be
they-
another prior
And
to
yes, there'd be another
construction.
hearing at that point, but,
Prior to construction.
correct.
I would like to remind the board that Ms. Pierce brought up at the very beginning that any consideration of moving forward with this would potentially involve a review and or time-based permit. I am honestly a little worried about scope creep. I would like to give the church the latitude to do activities, but I am very worried of how big some of these activities can be, especially in consideration to the neighbors. So anything that would potentially be approved, I am in agreement with Ms. Pierce that there should be maybe a 2 or 3 year time period to allow the neighbors to assess the true impact and bring back hard data. The permit would expire after 2 or 3 years, and you would have to come back, go through this process again, but we would have hard empirical evidence as far as impact to the community.
Excuse me. To me, that's an awful big burden that I have to do assess this over a period of 2 to 3 years and then report how bad it's been. I don't want to have to endure 2 or 3 years of the potential that has already been brought forward and then tell you it's not working out. This is 60 cars. Is this like I said it was going to be? You know, I think that I'm sorry. I don't think that would be a good idea as far as I'm concerned about what I would have to endure during that time.
Well,
Okay, I think we need to move forward.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
It's 9 o'clock, we can't be here all night, and I think we need to get to the general standards and see what the findings are gonna be. And based on that, we'll move ahead with a motion. So, we'll start with A, which is the proposed use shall be such that it will not adversely affect the use or development of neighboring properties and shall be in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations, the location, size, and heights of buildings, structures, walls, and fences, and the nature and extent of screening, buffering, and landscaping shall be such that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and or use of adjacent or nearby land and or buildings or impair the value thereof. So are we, does anyone feel that this standard can be met?
I think it's met.
I think it could be met with certain conditions, very strict conditions, as I've already stated.
I personally don't think it can be met.
I would say that if it can be met, it's to have that, I agree, it has that strict conditions. I'd say, and to me, I'd like to see it subject to review on an annual basis.
Well, we'll get into that later.
I mean,
I'm just saying, we need restriction, we need, in order to agree to this, I need restrictions.
Ms. Pierce?
I absolutely would not be able to vote in favor of this unless there was an annual review. And we give the neighbors a chance to check in. I also think 60 cars is just way too many. It's potentially as many as 240 people. I don't think there's a church in this county that can accommodate 240 people in their building. This is very problematic to me, and I think we need to start with, I keep putting myself in the position of the neighbors. I also think that if they have music, there has to be a reasonable cutoff time, because that music will go right on down that mountain. That's my take.
Okay, and basically we sort of approached in this B here, which is the next. The proposed use shall be such that pedestrian and vehicular traffic generated will not be hazardous or conflict with the existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood and on the streets serving the site. That is the crux of the issue as far as I'm concerned. That is a major problem.
Yeah, I think the view conditions.
I think that this should likewise be the subject of conditions, because we have to think, okay, let's.
What conditions can you put on these?
The fact that we can agree after year, if we have head-on collisions or we have trouble on the road, I think we should, this would become apparent once people are doing it, give them a chance to do it, but if they can, handle it, take care of it, and do a good job, and nobody causes problems with it, we're doing well, but we can't guarantee that, we can't see the future, so why don't we just, let the future play itself out, and on a short order, we'll look at it again in a year.
I think it's extremely unfair that a house down the street from them can have events with many cars, but they can't because they're a church.
Yeah.
But it's not because they're a church.
Yes.
I'm a property owner and we're still having to do this process.
I think the board agrees that we don't understand why we have to issue a special use permit for the activity that you're talking about. That's part of the problem.
Well, it's in the ordinance.
No, it's not necessarily. It's not clear in the ordinance.
I'm not saying that they should have unfettered rights because they're property owners. I'm saying in consideration of the standard, there has to be a balance.
Right. And the gentleman is gonna have his house surrounded by cars at least a few times, and I think maybe 8 times, if you're talking 8 times with somebody, this could be like every weekend for 2 months, but obviously it's been spread out further than that, 4 months, every other weekend, that still seems to be onerous in terms of the property, of the, people on that, who it's going 24 feet, you know what I mean? It just doesn't, it seems like onerous to me. But I mean, they do have their rights, and he has his rights, and we're trying to balance that, but I think maybe 8 might be too many, and
I agree. I think 8 is too many.
I think 8's too many. I mean, the thing is, if you brought the number down and you want to come back in some time and say, well, look at, we need 6 or we need 8 or something like that, everything's going hunky-dory, well, hey, that's a whole different story. But now we don't know the future. People do have anxieties, and we need to allow ourselves the process to review it again.
Mr. Chairman, what number would you propose?
I'm not proposing anything at this point. I'm going through the general standards that we need to go through right now.
Yeah, we just.
So on C, which has to do with utilities, drainage, parking, loading, and other necessary facilities to serve the proposed use shall be provided. Parking and loading requirements shall be in accordance with provisions of Article 9 and 10. That probably doesn't really apply, except that it's not worth mentioning. Signs are not
You know,
an
if you-
issue. I'm sorry.
word
Oh,
church,
excuse me, Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon.
if you take the word church out of this application, and it's, Joe Blow down the street who wants to have special events and blah, 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 all of these other conditions, I don't think we'd be spending this much time, and it would be an easy no.
No, we would have to do it. There's no requirement, as a matter of the ordinance, you can do it. I mean, I can think of a lot of places where that is happening and those guys are not getting permits. Red Oak Mountain.
Red Oak Mountain is like the first thing that came to mind. There's worshiping on there all the time and sunrise services and the like, and I've been to them.
Sure,
I can't imagine.
See, in a residential neighborhood, that's the whole crux of the matter to me.
Big pardon?
Is it in a residential neighborhood?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And quite honestly, that is, with Red Oak, that's privately owned property, and those events that take place up there are by permission from the people that own the property.
Yeah, well, these are privately owned, so
There are a number of those events, and the truth is, you're not impacting any residents around them. I've been to Baptist activities up there, and I've been to Episcopalian activities up there. There's no one to impact up there. And if you have to get out in a hurry, you can go across the field. It's a different setup here.
Well, can I get some clarification from the zoning administrator? If I am not a church and I own those 24 acres in a rural residential area, can I have these events?
No.
Because?
Let me remind you that you have a special use permit before you for a place of worship on their property. Please focus on that.
Well, that's.
The determination has been made.
I understand that. I understand that.
So now you need to focus on the application.
Right, but I'm not sure that the determination hasn't been made in violation of someone's constitutional rights to worship where it might please.
That is not the position of the BZA. Okay.
It's not what?
That is not in your purview. Nobody's appealed it.
I'm simply saying, I'm simply questioning
you need to focus on the
your decision.
application.
I'm simply questioning your decision that says
And if somebody
that
appeals it,
people
then you.
standing around the field are a place of worship. I'm not really sure that.
Mr. Tegelman,
Yes, ma'am.
it is not the place of the BZA to question my determination unless somebody appeals it.
No, I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying I'm commenting, and I think that the comments are pertinent. That's not my concern anyway, but I think that's, I would make a determination based on that
Let's
anyway.
move along here, Bill. Where am I?
Okay.
The future impact of the proposed use shall be considered and addressed in establishing a time limit on the permit. Existing and recent development, current zoning, and comprehensive plan shall be among the factors used in assessing the future impact of the proposed use and whether reconsideration of the permit after a slated period of time would be necessary and appropriate for the protection of the properties in the vicinity to ensure implementation of the comprehensive plan. I think we've already discussed that, and I think the general agreement is that, yes, that is something that needs to be considered. Does everyone agree with that?
This is one of the reasons why I think we're talking about time limits or.
Yes, that's what this
okay.
is about. Okay.
So,
F, the proposed use shall be such that air quality and surface and groundwater quality and qualities and quantity are not degraded or depleted to an extent that would hinder or discourage the appropriate development and or use of adjacent or nearby land and or buildings of, or impair the value thereof. We have questions there. To my knowledge, I don't know if anybody else, I have a question there. Does anybody else have a question
Well, I
in that area?
think it ultimately complies with the regulations that are required by the state and the county.
That's based on what?
Based on an approval of the ultimate permit, but we don't know that.
That's correct, but it's one of the things we have to consider, that's right there. That to me is a problem, is that there is, and it's apparently continuing, is that there is continuing evaluation of the development on this property by the soil and water people. And in the communications I had with them, they still they still have questions. Particularly when they started looking at the proposed parking, which was generated by the same firm that was supplying them with previous information. So there's, as I said, there's a question there. It hasn't been, it hasn't been decided. The plan's not in place, and so we just go, well, we'll just go ahead and maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't.
This mostly has to do with the design and construction of the road we're speaking of now, in terms of that aspect of it.
Well, or up top, I mean, I don't think all of the work has been completed up top to the satisfaction of the soil and water folks.
Well, I would think that whatever we approve would have to be dependent upon their assent to the project. I think I would be
Are there outstanding
against
soil and
overriding
water?
anything that they said, that would just be.
Are there outstanding soil and water issues?
Yes, from the email I got from them, yes. They have
We have not
concerns.
received any notice, so no notice.
What?
We have received no notice on any.
No, you haven't yet, but I went to soil and water because I had not necessarily questions on this particular site, but I just wanted some education on the considerations we needed to be looking at as a board when we look at these applications. And I knew that on the previous application and permit, that the soil and water people chimed in and sent a letter that Sharon made us aware of. And so I called them and asked on a general question, and in mentioning this property, I was told that they were already working on that. But they've been working on it since the first of the year.
And made a determination?
And they've been going back and forth on things have been submitted, and then they make suggestions, and they've been going back and forth apparently. But then when, I asked him, about the parking, he said, what parking? And I said, well, I got a plan that shows parking on here. And he said, well, we've never gotten anything like that. So I sent it to him. And he looked at it, and I'll read you what he said. He said, I took a look at the concept plan, and it is definitely not on any plans I've looked at. I believe the grading plan will need to be modified. A new E&S plan would be needed. The whole development is over 1 acre of disturbance and should have a construction permit from DEQ. This means a stormwater management plan reviewed and approved by DEQ. It is still possible that water quantity could be addressed through what I consider disconnecting, dissipation, and dispersion techniques. DEQ will require water quality practices either on-site or off-site. DEQ will require water quality practices either on-site or off-site credits. I'm not sure what that means. This level of improvement is on par with the original 2008 plans for a church and parking lot, not to mention the consideration of well and septic and ADA compliance and traffic.
And they had not received a copy of it because they only received copies through the county. All that should have been channeled through the county department.
And can you read for them the email you sent to me on things you wanted for this meeting?
Excuse me?
Can you read to your colleagues, get on record, the email that you sent on the list of things that you wanted for this meeting quickly?
They were copied.
We've already copied that.
But at no point, it was answering a hypothetical question that was forwarded to us from the Special Use Committee. I connected dots as you're doing today. what they were saying, what you were asking, and we asked for a hypothetical sketch. So we could say if we ever had to develop the parking to that level, we do have the space. I have learned very clearly, you disturb 2 acres of land, it's a lot to do. And I would never embark on disturbing 2 acres of land without getting approvals.
I'm not saying you're not gonna get approval. You will have to get approval. What I'm saying is that, with that in mind, I mean, that is what you are designating as parking areas from what I saw. That's, I mean, we get site plans and that's how we make decisions. We look at what's on the site plan. What's on the site plan is 134 parking spaces. That's what we're looking at.
We have to have that evaluated.
Okay, in respect, the question originally posed was, can you handle parking up there? And we just tried to answer that, yes, with enough data points that you knew we weren't bluffing.
Well,
And that was what we would ask at that meeting, can you handle parking?
I have a question. Some of the parking appears to be right pointed, like headlights into your property, right? Is that those are right along the property line pointed into your property,
It
correct?
looked like that to me on the drawing.
The ones on the side of the road going up in the bottom. Right, these are what I'd like to see those dispensed with, because I think those would be a severe imposition to you, and I don't think they're required in order to meet the 60-car limit.
Again, we were not trying, he asked
No, I
for
understand
scale
what you're
drawings
saying.
and trying to do it as accurately as we could to
Right.
comply with the short request. We don't ever see 100 parking. I don't see 60 parking.
Right, we understand, we agree, but
Why is
I
that
just
such a
think
hiccup
that.
then?
Well, if you don't see it, I don't think the
Designated
permit should
parking
be
with the
precisely.
headlights shining into this gentleman's property is probably inconvenient or rude. And I think that probably dispensing with that as a potential for parking would assuage a lot of my anxiety with regard to the impact on the neighbors, not to mention, I think that's not going to end the impact on the neighbors, but I think that's kind of a little much to ask.
Okay, and we've got to go through these standards here in order to satisfy the findings
Yeah.
before we make the motion, because
Before we do that though, I do think context is important. So before we go through the standards, is there anyone amenable to heavily conditioned, like review of that? Are we looking at just approval or not approval?
no, it's going to be with lots of conditions.
Lots of conditions.
Okay, so let's look at these standards from the lens of whatever those conditions would be.
Right.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement that 8 is way too many. Is that correct?
Right.
What is an appropriate number to look at these standards?
But the other thing, I mean, in thinking of that, you're not, where you including A, I mean, is it also?
It's also a maximum of 20 days, so it's looking at multi-day events.
And I'm,
Okay, but I'm just wondering, are we talking then vacation Bible school, like field activities, is that gonna be one of the 8?
Yes, potentially, because an event is anything with greater than 20 people.
Okay,
if that's what we choose.
And I'm also okay with completely prohibiting certain things like music events and things like that. I mean, yes.
Yes.
Acoustic
You know,
music.
how can we do that? Maybe we can prohibit, having
That's fine.
Well, go down the road and stop the parties on the very same road you're talking about. Big parties, lots of music. How can you, I mean, I understand mega wattage, but we're in the center of 28 acres with a tremendous amount of foliage. And everybody's land backs up to this land. So then you got another buffer zone of their own properties, their own barns, their own shops, their own gardens. We're not in their front yard. Not even Mr. Vitito's front yard.
Well, the egress is through his front, is the egress or not through your front yard? Basically, it's up your side yard, right?
Well, it's not on my property.
No, of course
my
not,
property.
but it's
Yes,
adjacent
it
to your
goes in front of my
property.
house to
Immediately
get to the
adjacent.
driveway, and then the driveway
Can I
goes
ask
to
you
the
all
side
to
of my
talk
house.
one at a time? It's really hard to hear as it is. please, thank you.
Yes. What are you asking?
Don't, you're talking back and
Oh,
forth,
right,
and
right.
it's very difficult.
Sorry, apologize.
Okay, let's get through this and then we'll get into the specifics here. The next one is, the proposed use will not result in unsafe conditions in relation to community facilities existing or planned as related to adequate police and fire protection and danger and congestion in travel and rescue services. And we've talked it already, but that's one of the big,
Well, that
14 feet is 14 feet, and I doubt, I don't know, but I was looking at, I don't know, the property lines. Mr. Benito, where's your property line in relationship to the roadway?
It's right on the edge of the roadway. It's my
That's your
property.
house, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, theoretically, VDOT could probably claim right of way and take out my fence or my tree. I'm not sure. But my property line, as far as I know, goes right to Headwaters Road.
Right, so basically the right of, probably the existing right of way, that's what I'm curious about, is the existing right of way right now may be 14 feet, which is the paved roadway.
But it's been that
And
way.
it runs the property lines.
Right, it's right on the
Yeah.
property line.
And it's just from way back when, that's when the road went in, that's and the way the houses were built, that's the way it is. So VDOT would have to come in and condemn property in order to widen that road, and that's not gonna happen.
On the way, on the
What?
other side of the road, not
What?
the wide.
There's a stream on the other side of the road.
There's
Well,
a ditch there and there's another house.
We're not in a position.
So that's not-
No, I know.
Come on, you guys. It's
What I'm
just-
saying
it's
is
Let's drop this.
that when talking to VDOT and mentioning the fact that the road might be widened, the comment was, that's not gonna happen. So the road is 14 feet, that's what I said, that's what we're dealing with, 14 feet, it's not gonna get any wider. And when it comes to people coming and going, rescue vehicles having to come and go, or mixing in or whatever, there is going to be an impact. And it could be, you don't know what the results of that's gonna be, but you have to be aware.
But we also have given us all kinds of assurances about adequate police presence and protection and guidance in those respects. So, obviously, those roads all up there are dangerous and congested if you get enough cars at once. But
That's right.
That's just the way it is.
But, number one, the roads, okay, let's go, but the roads you're talking about farther up are not public roads. Those are private roads. That's the problem they have up there, is that they're private roads, there's no HOA, and the roads are deteriorating. This is a public road,
Right,
so that's the difference.
This is Zone Village residential, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm okay with that one.
Okay, and the rest-
I mean, I think that's okay, but I could find that that's not a problem, except that I'd like to know that I'm not being a fool and see if that, last in a year, if we've got a problem or not, or maybe.
So that's what we're doing now. So let's, the rest of them are inconsequential to this situation, so
Right.
we are done with that portion, and we've done our due diligence, and let's move on what we're gonna do.
You want to make a motion?
I would say we would have to have a motion in order to start applying the condition.
Okay, well, I move that we approve this on a temporary basis, subject to the conditions of an annual review, at least for 1 year, perhaps 2. We can talk about that. A cutoff time when it's okay to say it.
You're gonna have to be specific, Bill. You're gonna have to be
We've got to
specific.
have no events, that make noise after a certain time, that's all. You can't say people can't go up there and camp out at night, but, maybe no amplified music after 8 o'clock, or, something reasonable. And I think that also should be subject to the review of and approval of soil and water and DEQ.
Well, that goes without saying.
Right, but I mean, we can't say we can do this and we're not ambitious about that. I mean, we have to realize that we are subservient to something.
How many events did you say?
Beg your pardon?
How many events?
All right, let's count them up, what are we talking about? They've already asked for it, let's give them what they've asked for. They've asked for sunrise service, they've asked for the vacation Bible schools, what would that entail?
Okay, that's a multiple day event.
Right, so you
And so
have
there's
20
a
days,
count also on
that could
days.
be a week if you wanted, I imagine. So that, in fact, it could be 2 weeks, that would still give you 4 days for other events. So if we had
If,
two week-long events in 4 days, that would be 6.
well, we can't figure it.
Well, I mean, we can't put the schedule up for them, but we were trying to come up with some kind of thing. What are they actually asking for? What do they
It's gonna
need?
it's gonna have to be days, events are not gonna work, because they already said that the event could be 1 day, it could be 3 days, or whatever.
The
So
planning
that is gonna
commission had a combination of 8 events with a maximum of 20 days.
So basically, I would say, you know, if we're gonna do it on days, because the events, and it doesn't make any sense to do it with both of those. So how many days? I mean, do we want to do 20 days, or do we want to, we can do 10 days?
How many cars would you need for Bible school?
Probably 10, 15 cars.
So we're talking about events.
Well, listen, if 20 people show up, it's automatically turns out to be an event, so we can't avoid that. So we have to allow for an event that's like 20 people. So, you know, maybe eight is what they really need. They want the fall festival, they want the sunrise service, they want, what, a couple of weeks of Bible school?
1 week.
10 days? 1 week, one week with weekends, 10 days of Bible
Mr. Chairman, may I
school,
propose
6 days?
something?
No.
Thank you. That's gonna give you an easy out. Nothing, he said no.
I want him to finish first.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to find out what you need. What is it that you, I mean, you have
That's what I was gonna try to say, yes, sir.
Yeah, right, so you've made specific requests, and I'm just trying to enumerate those really quickly in terms of, you know, we're talking about Bible school, and I understand, from the gallery, I understand like 10 days would be appropriate for that. We're talking about sunrise services, we're talking about what are the other events
The Sunrise Service Vacation Bible School, July 4th, concert in October, and the Children's Harvest Festival.
Looks like 5. You good with that?
Can we hear from the applicant? What they were
Thank you.
proper?
I would like to suggest, but I want to get the whole sentence in. We keep the 20, if it's under 20, it's not an event.
Right, I agree.
We go down to 5, but quantitative research on documenting good, bad experiences is not subjective to neighbors. We invite the county for the big events to come and let them give you quantitative data. Because I can assure you, there can always be a negative person in the flyer event. So the quantitative data that you would want to reestablish or extend the permit has got to be from an unbiased source, not a petition by the neighbors.
Well, I'm just saying, events, we're probably, I think what we've got our eye on is events that would happen that wouldn't be, you know, that we're not gonna, we're not asking people to come and say, oh, I don't feel good about this, or I feel good about that. We're looking at events. Are there gonna be some collisions down at Headwaters Avenue? Are we gonna have
That's quantitative, be a police report.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, this is why we need a review period, let's see how it works. And these people may be so severely inconvenienced that they're on the verge of suicide at the end.
Well, I just will
Bill, you're wondering.
Okay, let's review.
Can I say
We just want to.
I'm gonna repeat, we cannot set up a review process.
Yeah.
There is no way for us to do reviews. The
Except we
only
cancel the
option
permit.
will be a time-based permit.
Okay, then that's what I can propose. I propose we permit this for a year. So,
So,
no
was that the
advertising
motion?
after 8 o'clock?
Can we say something about the time?
Sure,
I think 1 year is too short. You're asking us to try to plan everything and give you an example in a 12-month period.
No, I think you're right. Let me pause here. I think you're right. I think that if something was gonna go wrong, it wouldn't go wrong that fast.
I can make sure I don't know. I mean, we do nothing but our privilege as
We want to assess the situation based upon real circumstances.
That's a 3-year.
Okay, so 2 years strikes me as a good compromise.
And Bill, were you accepting their proffer of, I think, did you say 5 events a year?
5 events. People under 20 is not counted as an event.
Right. So they get 4 dads out there with their kids camping.
And let's talk about cars, because 60 cars seems way beyond what you would ever actually see. So what is something that's a little bit more realistic?
I would say realistically, 40 cars. If it goes beyond 40, we are required to have police support.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm,
That's, I mean, because you don't know how many cars you're going to have, so, you know, and all of a sudden, it's a 39, you don't call it the sheriff's department, go, we've got, you know, people coming in here and we need help. That's not
Here's the deal. I can also have them go up to the church and bust them back down with other cars. I know how to count, and I know how to make a plan B. So if we get the 40 cars, whatever we decide on, the others can go up to the church, and we run a couple of cars back and forth.
Yeah.
So that accommodates. If the factors are measurable and obtainable, we can do it.
Right.
Well, and if it leaves 40 members of the church, at least you'd be able to.
Yeah, they can park up there, then we
You got one parking space for every member of the church, I think you're probably doing okay. And it's not like you can't come back and ask for more. This is not, nothing here is like, it might be a hassle, okay, yeah, but.
all right, can I?
But anyway, I think there should be, but you have no problem with the cutoff time of like, or dusk or
No, sir, that's it. Our people work in DC, the other Washington. They don't get home to 7 o'clock. They gotta have dinner, shower, and then go to a meeting. 8 o'clock is not late in our amount. You wanna go to a good party, it don't crank up to 10 o'clock, and I'm just saying.
We're not talking about big parties here, are we?
Well, if it's more than 20 people, I got a group. That group restriction, if it's 21 people, someone could say, hey, they're having a big party over here. Get your cop down here and because you get lots of phone calls when it comes to me. I do know that.
I believe you, I'm not questioning.
Okay. So, I would say 10:30, this fine. Because that gives us a 2-hour event.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Most people still have to listen to the news that late.
Yeah, I gotta find out what's happening on Fox News.
Bill, can I summarize your motion?
Yes.
So Bill's motion is a maximum of 5 events per year with a maximum of 20 days. An event is defined as greater than 20 people at site for a church activity. This excludes setup and tear down of the event. A maximum of 40 cars with the additional staff recommended conditions, as well as the added condition of no events after 10:30 p.m. and the permit expires on sale of the property. And
no sound after 10:30 p.m. Some events maybe are not.
Okay, wait a minute, Sharon?
There was a
Yes.
there was a clarification, Sharon, no sound after 10:30.
No amplified.
Amplified sound.
No amplifiers. That doesn't matter, sound, voice, and music, nothing, no amplifiers.
No amplifiers after 10:30 p.m.
Well,
Okay, I'm really keen to hear everybody. Julie, did we put in, they come back after a year
Right.
for review?
I did like to
what
just say that correct. It would be, it's not a review, it's the permit.
We asked for 2 years.
Permit expires after 2 years.
Yeah.
In which case, it would have to come back in and reapply and go through this whole thing all over again.
Do we get protection on quantitative research? Just because somebody wants to make a complaint, you take their word as it happened.
It's basically you're starting at a clean slate when you come back in here, so it'll be the whole process you've been through all over again.
But would it not help this committee, this group, if you had quantitative, unbiased research?
Sure, you're welcome to collect that and present it at that time. It's, we're not the ones who are out there collecting the research, we just listen to it when it's presented.
Okay, we'll get the,
So that's your problem, bailiwick there.
We'll do that. We'll get
And
the
that's it,
second.
well advised, and I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just saying, you know, that's not up to us.
Does anybody need me to repeat the motion?
I would question the tear down requirement in that can be in your under 20 people. And then I don't expect you're gonna have over 20 people up there
Set up or tear down.
for setup and tear down.
I wish.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think, it's that,
Strike it.
those are pretty good things that we're never gonna be able to enforce anyways. So,
I mean, nobody's gonna be up there counting, oh, you got 19 or 21.
I assure you there'll be some up there counting.
Okay, so are we ready to, all right. Sharon, are you, have any more input?
No, I think I'm good. Where are we gonna go with the DEQ though? Did that get, thrown to the side or what?
It's compliance with all state and local laws.
Yeah, you're right, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, that's my, that's my protracted.
Is there a second to the motion?
Also,
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Read it one more time, so.
The motion is to approve the special use permit with the following conditions of approval. A maximum of 5 events per year with a maximum of 20 days. Where an event is defined as greater than 20 people at the site for a church activity, a maximum of 40 cars. The permit expires after 2 years. And no amplifiers after 10:30 p.m. Permit expires on sale of property, and all staff recommended conditions, which include only outdoor recreation and services are permitted. Any new permanent structure would need another permit. 2, 8 events to take place in the calendar year, that would be striped to be 5 events. Compliance with all state and local laws, and finally, the property shall not be rented out to anyone.
Okay, and also, didn't we have a time limit on there of 10? Or 10, well,
That
10 or
was-
10:30?
It was no amplifiers after 10:30 was the motion.
Oh, so we're not putting any kind of a time limit on events?
I just captured the motion.
Are we okay with that?
Well, I think it would be, I think a time limit on events might be a good idea because we don't want people driving in and out of there at 1 and 2:30 in the morning waking the neighbors up, do we?
They drive up and down the road at 1 o'clock in the morning.
No, I mean the driveway. The driveway is what we're talking about.
Driveway's further away than the main road.
The road is out of our purview. If the VDOT.
Our driveway is further away than the main road.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I'm sorry,
I understand.
this discussion is this way right
Stick with the motion.
Okay, I do stick with the motion we have. No more additions.
We have a motion and a second.
Yes, motion is second.
now. Okay, we have a motion and a second. So roll call vote. We'll start with Sharon.
Yeah, I'm good, yes.
Good.
Can you keep going from there?
Bill?
Yeah, I made the motion. It's, I'm with it. I agree, so.
Yeah,
I mean, yes.
I'm still not comfortable with it, so I'm gonna vote nay.
I vote no. This passes.
Vote. Permit passes. And having no other business, oh, wait a minute, no, we do have other business.
Oh, yes, we definitely.
Julie, go ahead and
Yes, sir.
give us a rundown of the request, or the rest of y'all, feel free to leave.
Y'all want help down the steps? No. I'll have good evening.
Sharon, we added an item to the agenda. We're just waiting for people to leave the room, so you'll hear us better.
Thank you.
Well, I don't see that they're relevant right now. We voted unless you want to reconsider the vote. Okay, so let's
Reconsider the expenses.
So the next order of business is new business. If you're not aware, if you've not seen the email, I was served a writ of certiorari for the neighbors are appealing the decision for the dog kennel case, the special use permit. As part of the writ of certiorari, we are required to submit all of the records to the county as part of the litigation, or not to the county, but to the courts. I have all of that together from Michelle, so that will be filed as requested with the courts. I'm here to seek from the board, I don't think there's I think at that point of us providing that information to the court, it's really a case with the Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors has their own representation, which is covered by insurance. Apparently it's still on the docket.
And since she withdrew her application?
It's still on the docket.
Then you have to understand that we approved it for not just her, but for Chris Parrish. There were two names on the application.
Oh.
And
in either case, the case has not been dismissed. The Board of Supervisors attorney has tried to get it dismissed. It has not yet been dismissed. That's why I had not actually filed for the writ yet, because I kind of assumed it was going to be dismissed as well. It has not been. So, so just in preparation for wherever this might go, I'm just seeking approval from the board to request from our insurance coverage representation from the board should this go any further. Likely the representation would be Mike Lockerbie, who we're already familiar with. If the differentiation would be, we have a set amount of funds right now that we use to fund Mike's advice. This would just be covered from the insurance policy instead of using the county's funds. As I said, I don't think this is gonna go anywhere, but I just wanna get this lined up and have everybody on board with the action prior to requesting.
And we have already utilized his services because
It's just a matter of who's paying the bill.
Yeah,
basically.
and, but the reason we have done that is because she was served with papers, and you don't respond to things like that without consulting with an attorney, and that is our attorney. So that's why we have an attorney, because there seems to be some heartburn with some people on the Board of Supervisors about us utilizing the services of our attorney. And that's,
Just
you
make
know,
a
we
motion to that.
have to do this, we have to protect ourselves, so.
Okay, so we just make a motion to that effect that we should just engage, I move we engage, make arrangements to engage our attorney if it comes to that.
Well, I guess the specific acts is to engage, however we file for the insurance coverage for, I don't know how we would go about doing it. The supervisors have done it.
There's already money has been expended.
The county has an insurance policy for these kinds of things,
Yeah.
so, for this kind of litigation.
So we just want to apply for coverage.
Coverage for,
Right.
should
Right.
this go
Oh, yeah,
against.
that's-
I move we apply for coverage.
Okay,
Okay,
I second that
coverage,
motion.
okay.
Yes.
okay.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sharon, are you good with that? Okay, I think that was an aye.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll take that to be an aye. Okay, I would then, being no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second it? Oh, I make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thanks Sharon.
Night.